Hello vinyl community, I'm Gary and this is Physical Format Rock and Roll. Thanks for tuning in out in the backyard. It's a hot day, but it's not too bad in the shade, my friends. So I'm doing this video as a shout out to my good friend Craig over at A to Z Music Haven. Craig and I talk a lot. I have been subscribed to his channel, I think pretty much from the start, early on. Anyway, he started a vinyl thread, and it is to show 4 albums from one decade and 4 albums from another decade. Pick ones that you haven't talked about before. Now maybe you showed them like in a vinyl find or something, but you didn't really talk about them at all. So I will try to do this fairly quickly since there's 8 albums that I have to show. And the first decade that I picked, now I'm not saying these are my favorite decades or anything, I just picked 2 random decades. So the first decade that I picked is the 70s, which that actually might be my favorite decade for music, but anyway. The album that I picked is Bachman Turner Overdrive. This is their debut album, and I've had this for quite a while. I don't think I've ever talked about it. Most people obviously are familiar with Bachman Turner Overdrive, very popular in the 70s, had a string of hits. You had Randy Bachman, Fred Turner in there, which probably made sense if they used their last names instead of calling it Randy Fred Overdrive, but this is one of my favorite of their albums. This is their debut, and look at them dudes. They're saying, hey man, let's party. This has Hold Back the Water on there, which I really like, and it also has Stayed Awake All Night, which is a fantastic song, and Crocus does a great version of it. And this is one everybody sees this, right? This is out in the wild. You can pick this up usually for a couple bucks in fairly decent shape if you're lucky. Definitely pick this one up if you don't already have it. Next is one that I actually just recently got from my buddy Drew over at Diamond Needles, and this is the band Stray. This album is called Tracks. This is actually a collection of some songs from other albums and then a couple songs that were not previously released. This band, never heard of them before. They were over in Europe, like the UK, I believe, in the 70s, and they're just a pretty good hard rock band with a little bit of psychedelia added to it, in my mind. I thought it was pretty cool. Never heard of them before, but I like this album. Pick that one up if you can. Here's another one that I haven't talked about. It's a band that I talked about. It's one of my bands I love from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and that's Heart. This is Magazine. This album usually isn't that hard to find either. This was one that they did when they were having some disputes with their record company. They put this album out. Heart didn't really want it out at the time. I think the track listing is not what they want. It's got a couple cover songs in here, but it's also got some of their classics. Heartless and Devil Delight start this album out. Both kick-ass Heart songs, some of their best songs right there. Also, they do a fantastic version of Without You by Harry Nilsson, and this might be my favorite version of that song right here. As you can imagine, Ann Wilson singing that song. Brilliant. And then last from the 70s is Deliver the Word by War. This would have been, that's not a rip, by the way, that's the way it is made. This would have been one of the albums that was in that box set that came out on Record Store Day. The Amish are back there doing some work. That was a horse you heard. Hopefully they won't get too loud here behind me. Anyway, this is a pretty cool album. Starts out, I know it starts out with this instrumental. It's fairly long. Then the second song on here, In Your Eyes, kind of an odd song. Not that crazy about that one, but then it goes into Gypsy Man, and that's a great one. It's a longer song, really cool. So War, 70s, that's fantastic stuff. Oh, here they come. Here they come. Did you see them back there? Doo, doo, doo. There they go. Next up, okay, now the next decade is the last 10 years. I just picked albums from the last 10 years. The first one, and I know I am cheating on this because this is not an album, it's a CD. This is You and Me by Nancy Wilson. It's a solo album by Nancy Wilson from Heart. And the cool thing is, it's autographed. That was some kind of charity deal. This is the track listing though. And I will say, this album has some good moments on it. And Nancy sounds fine, plays well. She got some cool guest stars, like on the song Party at the Angel Ballroom has Taylor Hawkins and Duff McKagan on it. That's one of the best songs on here. What I don't like about it is it starts out the album with a really slow, mellow song that is just not the way to start out this album. And then it's got like four or five cover versions on here. And to me, that just does not make sense. When you are making a solo album, you're in Heart. You know, your sister Ann normally does all the singing, and now you're doing the singing, and you do all these cover songs on here. To me, that just doesn't make sense. They sound fine, but I just don't get the point of it, of doing them, unless you were going to like totally do them a different way. Another really good song on here is The Dragon, and there's an instrumental called For Edward that she does, which is a tribute to Eddie Van Halen. It's okay, but it's nothing that great, I guess. Next up is the latest album. This came out in 2020, I believe. Yeah. This is Alanis Morissette. This is her last studio album. It's called Such Pretty Forks in the Road. And here is Alanis looking all shiny there with her hair. This is another album that's kind of like a lot of later Alanis albums. To me, it's, you know, there's nothing really special about that one. It's got good songs on here. It's got its moments, but there's also songs on here which are kind of just not that special. I mean, I like it. There's definitely some good songs on here. I love Alanis Morissette. And there's some songs on here I'm totally happy with. If you're a Alanis fan, you definitely need to buy it. But if you're not, it's not the one I would pick up, because there are too many songs that are just kind of mediocre on here. But anyway, that's that one. Next up, this is kind of cheating, showing this one for the last 10 years, but it actually just came out last year. And this was another VCLT from George Allen, from George Allen's LPs and CDs. And this is Joe Bonamassa, A New Day Now. This is actually a remastered version of his debut album, but this just came out last year, so I'm still going to include it in this last 10 years. This is a wonderful album. It's done on 180 gram, and it's done on 2 records. You can see the early, I love that picture there of the Strat. Early Joe Bonamassa looking like a kid there, because he was pretty young. He started out very young. This is just a good collection of blues songs, blues rock. He sounds, you know, he's got his influences, you can tell. He sounds a little bit like Stevie Ray at times. I won't put him quite up that high, but this is a fine album to have. Joe Bonamassa. Pick this remastered version up if you are into blues rock. Finally, probably my favorite album out of those 4 from that I showed, and this is Transcendence by Berlin. This was the last studio album by Berlin. This came out in 2020, I believe. There's the back of it. This is a pretty solid album. I don't like it as well as I did Voyeur, which was one that, well, that's been a few years since that one came out. This is kind of on a cool looking white vinyl. I like that label on there. I think that's pretty sweet looking. But this is a good solid album. This is more upbeat than some of the later Berlin albums. It still has its moody moments. Obviously this is electronic type music, a little bit on the dance side at times, so you know you can dance to some of this record if you would like to. But Terry Nunn sounds in good form on this record, very well done. If you are a fan of Berlin and you have never picked up this album, I would recommend picking this one up. So anyway, those are 4 albums, 8 albums, 4 from 2 different decades, for my good friend Craig over at A to Z Music Haven. If you haven't subscribed to him, go over and check him out and give him a sub. He's a good, nice, friendly person that I like, get along with. Just talked to him today, as a matter of fact. So anyway, here's to you, Craig. And here's to everybody who was watching this. I appreciate it very much. I'm Gary. This is Physical Format Rock and Roll. And I'll leave his link down below if you want to go check that out. Till the next time, my friends, I will see you down the road.